The day began quietly in Washington, but that calm disappeared the moment Senator Chuck Schumer stepped in front of the press. Reporters were already gathered in the hallway, sensing that something important was about to be announced. Their cameras switched on instantly as Schumer walked toward the microphones with a determined expression, the kind that suggested he had come prepared to deliver a strong message. Schumer cleared his throat, adjusted the papers in his hand, and began speaking about a recent discussion taking place in political circles. According to him, Pete Hegseth was being considered for an advisory role connected to national matters. Schumer paused, looked directly at the cameras, and then firmly stated that he believed Hegseth was unqualified for such a position. His words were sharp, clear, and delivered with a confidence that left no doubt about his stance. Reporters reacted instantly. Pens moved rapidly across notepads, and questions echoed through the room. Schumer continued, explaining that the role required deep experience in administrative decision-making and policy handling. In his view, Hegseth did not meet the level of expertise needed. He repeated his concerns several times, ensuring that his message would become the headline of the day. Inside newsrooms and across political platforms, the statement spread like wildfire. Analysts began discussing Schumer's comments, breaking down every sentence and debating whether his criticism was based on practical evaluation or political friction. Supporters of Hegseth quickly pushed back, arguing that his military background, leadership record, and communication skills provided ample strength for the position being discussed. But Schumer's remarks had already created a wave that could not be ignored. Meanwhile, far from the press room, former President Donald Trump watched the situation unfold. He had always been vocal in his support for Hegseth and did not appreciate what he viewed as unfair attacks on people aligned with his vision. As Schumer ended the press conference and walked away from the cameras, Washington felt a sudden shift in energy. Reporters sensed that a powerful response might be coming, and they waited for it with growing anticipation. The air was thick with tension. Schumer had delivered his criticism with confidence, but none of the reporters could predict how quickly the next chapter would begin, or how dramatically it would affect the day ahead. While the media continued replaying Schumer's statement, former President Donald Trump sat in a private meeting room surrounded by advisors. The moment Schumer's comments appeared on the screens in front of him, Trump leaned forward with visible irritation. He listened carefully to every word, his expression tightening as the accusation of being unqualified echoed across the broadcast. Trump had always been protective of those he believed were loyal, and Pete Hegseth was one of the individuals he respected for both his military background and outspoken nature. To Trump, Schumer's remarks were not just criticism, they were an unnecessary attack meant to undermine someone he considered capable and committed. Within seconds, Trump instructed his team to prepare a public response. What happened next unfolded faster than anyone expected. Trump stepped into a nearby media room where cameras were already positioned from earlier interviews. Without delay, he issued a statement defending Hegseth with full confidence. His tone was sharp, but controlled, as he emphasized Hegseth's service record, leadership experience, and deep understanding of national affairs. Trump made it clear that he disagreed entirely with Schumer's assessment. He reminded the press that many individuals throughout history had been doubted before proving themselves highly capable. He argued that Schumer's remarks were unnecessary and based more on political rivalry than genuine evaluation. As Trump continued speaking, his voice grew stronger, and the energy in the room shifted. Reporters who had just covered Schumer's remarks were now scrambling to capture Trump's countermessage. Within minutes, Trump's statement circulated across major news outlets, creating an immediate balance to Schumer's earlier criticism. Analysts quickly noticed that Trump's response was not defensive, it was assertive and direct. He reframed the entire discussion by highlighting Hegseth's strengths and questioning the motivation behind Schumer's attack. As the media segments played side by side, the contrast between Schumer's accusation and Trump's rebuttal became a major point of national discussion. Commentators debated which perspective carried more weight. Supporters of Trump praised him for acting swiftly, while others noted how rapidly the political atmosphere had intensified. Back in the Senate offices, Schumer's team watched Trump's response unfold. Some staff members looked unsettled, fully aware that the conversation had now turned into a much larger political storm than they had anticipated. Trump's reaction had not only defended Hegseth but had also shifted public attention back onto Schumer's motives. By the time the day progressed toward afternoon, the political narrative had completely changed. What began as Schumer's confident criticism was now evolving into a fierce debate, one that would only grow deeper as both sides prepared for the next move. As the afternoon progressed, the political atmosphere across the country shifted dramatically. News channels began broadcasting split-screen coverage, Schumer's morning comments on one side and Trump's rapid, forceful response on the other. The contrast captured the nation's attention. Viewers at home, analysts in studios, and political observers everywhere began weighing the arguments coming from both leaders. On social platforms, discussions erupted almost instantly. Supporters of Pete Hegseth praised Trump's firm defense, pointing to Hegseth's years of military service and leadership as evidence of competence. Many argued that Schumer's criticism felt dismissive and unnecessary, suggesting it was aimed more at creating political waves than at evaluating qualifications. Others, however, felt Schumer had a right to raise questions about any potential advisory appointment. But even among those voices, there was a noticeable shift. Trump's quick response seemed to have changed the tone of the debate. In political talk shows, commentators broke down every statement with intense scrutiny. Some experts noted that Schumer's remarks might have been strategically planned, but Trump's immediate reaction had disrupted that strategy. Instead of weakening Hegseth's public image, the exchange had made him a central figure in a large national conversation. Analysts pointed out that attacks sometimes backfired when the opposing side responded with overwhelming speed and confidence, which was exactly what Trump had done. Meanwhile, inside Pete Hegseth's own circle, the reaction was mixed with surprise and gratitude. Hegseth had expected criticism, but he did not anticipate such a swift and direct defense from Trump. Close colleagues encouraged him to maintain composure and allow the political process to unfold naturally. They reminded him that the public spotlight could shift quickly, especially when two major political figures were clashing openly. In Senate offices, the tension was growing. Schumer's team reviewed Trump's statement repeatedly, recognizing the intensity of the backlash. Some staffers wondered whether the criticism directed at Hegseth had been stronger than necessary. Others insisted the senator had made a legitimate point. But regardless of internal opinions, the reality was undeniable. Trump's response had changed the momentum of the narrative. Across Washington, journalists prepared updates for the evening news cycle. They sensed that the story was far from over. The question on everyone's mind now was simple: how would Schumer react to Trump's rebuttal, and what impact would this escalating exchange have on the political environment? As the evening approached, pressure built on Schumer to address the situation once again. Trump's forceful defense of Hegseth had put him in a difficult position, and the nation waited to see whether he would stand by his earlier statement, soften his tone, or shift the conversation in a new direction. The stage was set for the next chapter, and the tension only continued to rise. As night approached, Senator Chuck Schumer found himself in a situation far different from what he had anticipated earlier that morning. His comments about Pete Hegseth had been intended as a direct critique, but Trump's swift and powerful response had shifted the entire national conversation. Instead of questioning Hegseth's qualifications, the public was now questioning Schumer's motives. Inside Schumer's office, a tense meeting was underway. Advisors surrounded a long table, reviewing news coverage and public reactions. Nearly every major outlet was reporting the same thing: Trump's defense had significantly weakened the impact of Schumer's accusation. Analysts were highlighting how quickly the political balance had changed, and some commentators suggested that Schumer's remarks had unintentionally helped bring more attention and support to Hegseth. Schumer listened quietly as his team updated him. Some of the staff urged him to stand firm, insisting that he had raised a reasonable concern about the qualifications required for a sensitive national role. Others took a more cautious approach, pointing out that the public response had not been in their favor. The political landscape had shifted, and any additional statements needed to be made with strategic care. Meanwhile, outside the office, reporters were gathered in the hallway, waiting for Schumer to address the growing reaction. Many were prepared with questions about whether he regretted calling Hegseth unqualified. Others planned to ask whether Trump's defense had changed his position. The pressure was intense, and Schumer's team knew that silence could make the situation worse. After reviewing several drafts, Schumer finally stepped in front of the cameras for a brief evening statement. His tone was firm, but noticeably more measured than in the morning. He clarified that his comments were not personal, but focused on the responsibilities and expectations of the advisory role. However, he avoided repeating the harsh language he had used earlier. Reporters immediately picked up on the difference. The shift in tone signaled that Schumer understood the impact Trump's response had created. Though he did not directly retract his earlier criticism, the softer approach hinted that he was aware the situation had grown beyond a simple disagreement over qualifications. Across the country, viewers watched the press briefing with keen interest. Many noticed how different this statement felt compared to the morning's confident attack. Political commentators pointed out that Trump's rapid intervention had placed Schumer in a defensive position. Even people who supported Schumer politically acknowledged that the day had not unfolded as he expected. As Schumer finished his remarks and walked away from the podium, the atmosphere in Washington reflected a sense of unresolved tension. The political exchange had transformed into something larger, a public confrontation that now carried consequences for everyone involved. But while Schumer tried to stabilize the situation, Trump and his supporters were preparing their next steps. The story was far from over, and the final part of this unfolding drama would soon emerge. The following morning arrived with a sense of anticipation. News outlets had spent the entire previous night analyzing Schumer's softened statement and Trump's forceful rebuttal. Public discussions had grown louder, and political commentators were preparing for another day of debates. Everyone was waiting to see what would unfold next, especially Pete Hegseth, whose name had moved from a quiet advisory consideration to the center of a national conversation. As the sun rose over Washington, Hegseth finally decided to speak publicly. Standing in a modest studio, he addressed the situation with calm professionalism. Instead of responding emotionally, he expressed gratitude toward Trump for the swift defense and acknowledged that criticism was part of public life. He emphasized the importance of focusing on national responsibilities rather than political clashes. His tone was steady and composed, which earned him respect even from individuals who had not been familiar with his background before the controversy. Meanwhile, Trump continued to highlight Hegseth's strengths during interviews, reinforcing the message that the attack against him had been unjustified. He portrayed Hegseth as dedicated, disciplined, and experienced, qualities he felt were essential for any advisory position. Trump's continued support amplified the public's interest, turning what had begun as a political disagreement into a defining moment for Hegseth's professional reputation. As the narrative settled, it became clear that Schumer's earlier comments had not landed as he intended. Instead of weakening Hegseth's standing, they had drawn national attention to his experience and allowed Trump to shape the conversation with overwhelming speed. The contrast between Schumer's morning criticism and Trump's immediate reaction became a case study for political analysts discussing the influence of rapid public responses. In political circles, many quietly admitted that Schumer had underestimated how quickly Trump would counter the accusation. The unexpected backlash served as a reminder of how unpredictable the political environment could be, especially when strong personalities were involved. Even within Schumer's team, there was acknowledgement that the situation had turned into something larger than planned. By the end of the day, the tension began to ease as attention shifted toward other national stories. Yet the impact of the confrontation remained. Schumer had faced a wave of criticism he had not anticipated. Hegseth gained public visibility and support far beyond what he expected. And Trump had once again demonstrated how quickly he could reshape a political narrative with a single decisive response. In the broader landscape, the incident stood as a clear example of how rapidly public opinion could shift, how political statements could backfire, and how a single moment could influence the reputation of multiple leaders. As the news cycle moved forward, one thing was certain: the exchange between Schumer, Hegseth, and Trump would be remembered as a moment where a forceful response changed the direction of the entire conversation.